How are you? Good evening. It's Wednesday, May 21st, 2025, and you're at the StanCog Policy Board. Welcome. We're good. Go ahead and start the roll call, please.
Member Chiesa,
Here.
Member Graywall,
Here.
Chair Condit,
Here.
Member Condit,
Present.
Member Withrow,
Here.
Member Lopez, Alternate Member McFadden,
Here.
Member Swallen, Member Escutia Brayton. Here. Member Wright, Member Graham,
Here.
Member Gilbert,
Here.
Alternate Member Roku,
Present.
Member Hernandez,
Here.
Member Phillips,
Here.
and Member Gokin, and Caltrans ex officio Caleb Brock.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Shannon. Next up is our Pledge of Allegiance. If we could all stand, please. All right, next up is public comment. Members of the public may address the policy board on any item not on the agenda. Comments shall be limited to 5 minutes. And we cannot take action on items that are not on the agenda. Do we have any public comment about items that are not on the agenda? Seeing none, I'll close public comment and bring it back. And next up on the item on the agenda is consent calendar. Any policy board member like to pull any consent item? Okay, I'll take it out to the public. Would anybody from the public like to make a comment on any consent item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to entertain a motion.
Motion to approve. Second.
I have a first and I have a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Unanimous. All right, moving on, discussion items. Motion to adopt the Measure L Master Funding Agreement for fiscal years 2025-26 through 2029-2030. Jean Flett.
Great. Thank you. Yes, so this item is for the Measure L Master Funding Agreement. I want to start with just a little bit of background on this first slide. So the Measure L 25-year half-cent sales tax was approved by an overwhelming 71% of the Stanislaus County voters in 2016. The revenues for that Measure L are deposited in a special fund used solely for transportation improvement projects and programs described in Measure L expenditure. Jurisdictions must comply with the requirements of the Master Funding Agreement and the Measure L policies and procedures to be eligible for funding. Next slide. So the current Measure L Master Funding Agreement expires on June 30, 2025. The new agreement will have a term of July 1st, 2025 to June 30, 2030. The only change to the current agreement that's being proposed at this time is that Move Stanislaus will have its budget occur on will be paid on an annual basis as opposed to a monthly basis once the policy board has reviewed and approved Move's annual budget. Next slide. So this item was presented to the Management and Finance Committee and the Executive Committee. The Executive Committee unanimously recommended the Policy Board adopt the Measure L Master Funding Agreement. The MFC made a motion that the Master Funding Agree address two things: detailed accounting for the 1% of outreach and education, and the annually return any unspent funds to the local agencies. Now, the board can address the detailed accounting of the 1% for the outreach and education this evening as part of the Master Funding Agreement. regarding the annual return of any unspent funds to the local agencies, that can be considered for an updates to the Measure L policies and procedures. It's in a different agreement and can be brought back to the board at a future meeting. That concludes my report, and I would happy to address questions.
Any questions from the policy board?
I do. On the unspent funds from the 1% outreach, why cannot be addressed now in the bylaws?
Because we're talking about the master agreement tonight solely. That's what's on the agenda, the master agreement. If the board wants to talk about the unspent funds, that comes back to, you can ask that it comes back to you for the Measure L policies and procedures. That's where that element belongs, not in the master funding agreement.
Any other questions?
So, but that could have been agendized with this tonight. We could have considered them both at the same time if it had been agendized.
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Thank you, members. The item was presented, this Measure L agreement was presented to the Management and Finance and Executive at our May meeting. And because the agreement is expiring by June 30th, that's the reason we were just trying to bring this item and just addressing the comments that we heard at the May meeting.
But at the Management and Finance Committee, according to the minutes, that concern was raised by the chair of the Management and Finance Committee to be added to for Article 3 in the agreement here.
Yes, that was part of what the motion was, to put it in this agreement. It doesn't belong in this
And
agreement.
Monica, you may want to, we
Yeah.
consulted with Monica to see what we could do to bring it to you tonight. And so I'll let her explain.
So thank you for the comments and the questions. As Jean is articulating, the Management and Finance Committee did make a motion which included two items. One, a detailed accounting for the 1%, which can be included in the master funding agreement because the master funding agreement sets forth the rules for both StanCog and the recipient agencies as it pertains to their receipt of Measure L. So we could do the 1% for outreach and education accounting as part of that. As Jean has indicated, the returning of unspent funds, that would be a board decision. That's a policy decision. It was the board that implemented the 1% for public outreach back in February of 2024. So we would need to bring that back at a future meeting. And to Member Gokin, to your point as why we didn't agendize it this evening, had we done that based on the Management and Finance Committee, we would not have been able to present that to our other standing committees to give them an opportunity to provide input on that particular item before we brought it to the policy board. So that's why we didn't put that on this evening's agenda, but we could do that for a future agenda, June or August. We're dark in July.
And also, there's a process for this agreement, right? It has to go to their council, so it's kind of like an urgent for the cities to have this master agreement as well, because
order
they
to
have
be
go
paid,
back to
yes.
their councils. And June is upon us.
I don't understand that. Can you elaborate more on what that process is? That's,
Each of the cities and the county that, or any recipients, including MOVE and Stan RTA, they need to go back to their respective boards to get this master agreement approved as well.
So,
It needs to be done before the June
And-
30th.
yes, in order to be paid the Measure L funds, this has to be executed by then.
so this master agreement, the subject of the master agreement was presented to StanCog's Finance and Management Committee in May, correct?
Correct.
And we knew that other bodies would need to weigh in and approve that. Have timing, right? Before the deadline, which is what did you say, June?
June 30th.
June 30th. So was there enough time allocated for that? Doesn't sound like it.
No, and the comment came, but there's ways to address it at a future meeting, the other part. Member Gokin's point is, why didn't you bring both? It's just the timing was not in our favor right now.
Is it possible to, for the policy committee to consider a motion to approve this agenda item contingent that, one, it articulates a detailed accounting as recommended by the Finance and Management Committee, as well as number two, address at a future meeting the reimbursement of remaining funding. Is that feasible, Monica?
That is feasible, yes. We would just need that as part of any motion on this item this evening. And I've made note of those, so if somebody wanted to move that, we could do that this evening, yes.
Can I ask a question? Because the reimbursement of the money, you have to have some money in there. Someone has to determine how much money we need to carry over all the time, 100,000, 200,000, $500,000. And then you stop collecting, you reimburse afterwards, or else we wouldn't possibly be able to okay contracts as a board. So shouldn't we figure out what that number is? I don't know if I'm making sense. But just to refund at the end of the year, if we had, I think we've got a $245,000 contract, and we're going to
Correct.
collect 600,000, 500, I think we're hitting for 590,000. At the end of the year, we just cleared it, we would end up with zero balance, and then we'd have to start collecting again. So shouldn't we come up with a policy that fulfills that obligation? Because we don't want to build up $1 million or $2 million, right? There.
Well, yeah, well, so now, didn't we approve a 1% annually for the outreach? That's my understanding, and there was what, the 585 or 600,000 that was allocated last year. And the Management and Finance Committee's point was that this board allocated the 1%, that we signed a contract for 300,000 or so, I believe it was, for the outreach, leaving the additional 285 or 300 unallocated. And so they wanted the unallocated portion returned at the end of the fiscal year, and anything that would later be determined not to have been done by the contract would obviously roll over to the next year and then be able to come back. Speaking to my city manager, he told me that was what the discussion was at the Management and Finance Committee. So if, like, we didn't allocate the other 300,000, then what's the point of leaving that, because it's not allocated, so it can't be spent at the end of the fiscal year?
So then we come back and we change the policy to whatever it is that, because I would tell you, you need to keep some money in that account in
Yeah.
case we want to allocate something, there would be no money.
Yeah,
We
well,
refunded it all.
well, yeah, because the 1% goes in as of July 1st, the new fiscal year. So now you have the new 1%.
We start collecting in August, though, right?
Yeah,
August, so
we-
we're like
Yeah.
9 months in or 8 months in.
Yeah, and just remember that 619 is an estimate. We don't know how much we're going to collect in taxes. It's an estimate.
But you're still only with each monthly reimburse, or when the Board of Equalization sends us a check, you only
Right.
keep 1%. That's why it's
Yes.
406,000 or
Yes,
whatever
that
the
is
number is,
correct. Mhm,
40.6 million
mhm.
has been collected so far. So it's, and I don't, again, I don't want all the money reimbursed, but I think that there should be some money kept in there. And I don't know how much that is, but if 1 year's allotment was supposed to be 600,000 and we agreed to that on an ongoing basis, there's no reason, if we don't have a contract, I would agree with you. But if we have a contract for 300,000 and we zero it out at the end of the year, then there's zero money in there. And if we decide that we want to enhance the contract or do something, we're going to start the process all over again. I don't know.
Well, I mean, we could even set a date 3 to 6 months out that, any money not spent in that fiscal year shall be returned by, December 1st into the Measure L to be allocated
Yeah.
per the formula to the cities. That was just the concern of the city managers and the county, was that when the Measure L funding was approved, that it's because the citizens wanted to see projects done. They wanted to see improvement in the roads, transportation, and everything in the county. And that's what they're hoping to deliver. So they're trying to, maximize every dollar possible. That was the discussion.
I would agree, but we're the ones that passed it, so we can change it right back.
Could you
Yes.
also clarify what point and who receives the communications plans when they're drafted?
When
The company,
Okay,
so,
mhm.
so we're the administrator of the contract, but then, Gene works with the cities and the
Mhm.
county, depending on what information we're trying to gather from. But it comes to Stancog, and then we share it with the cities and
Mhm.
county. We have been a little slow with the consultant, and we kind of keep him a little restrictive right now, so, but
Mhm.
now Gene has a scope with them and has meetings, so you're going to see more activity, and our plan is to come back to this board, to the management and finance, and bring them information and updates of what they're doing, because there is some activities occurring in our county, which is very good. It's good success stories, so we want them to be out there doing some good work for us. Yeah.
Just a question on that. So it's an accrual, not an allotment. So like we don't get at the beginning of a fiscal year because based on what you just said, since it's a portion of what anticipated
Mhm.
revenues received, you would get 1% of that. So you'd have to kind of forecast what amount would go in. So it's an accrual over the year and then
Yes.
what's not spent.
Right.
So that leads me to kind of agree with Supervisor Chiesa that you don't want to just, take out the whole bank account and bring it down to zero because then you can't front end projects. But then if we are giving it back, which I'm not against getting any money back for the cities or counties, but then is the intent of the outreach realized if you're just giving back that 1% that was supposed to be spent on outreach and outreach and education?
And those are great questions, and it's kind of like, we haven't had it a year with this contractor yet, so even though the board signed it, we didn't really start, so
Right, right. We didn't really start until the summer, yeah.
it may become a problem down the road, but
Well, I mean, it can go back to the cities and counties if the intent is to still spend it and then they do it themselves, respectively, each city or county doing it themselves. But I think if we put that stipulation in there when we pass the tax, that 1% would go towards outreach, then we got to make sure that 1% goes towards outreach, not
Right.
into,
correct.
general fund for other expenditures.
Well, no, and that cannot happen. I mean, that's already in a separate account, and
Right.
that's money that is
No,
allocated.
it can't happen with what's allocated to you, but if you were to return it to the cities and
Oh,
county,
to the
what
cities
they
to-
would do with it.
Well, they need to go back. It's because it's coming out of the pot of their street and roads, their local roads. And
Mhm.
so it has to go back to the 65% categories.
So is it,
Yeah, I understand that, but then you would still need them, hold them accountable to make sure that they're spending it on outreach, even though it's going back into their large pot of transportation and
You know, and
infrastructure.
that's a great question, because you're the policy board makers, and when Member Kies is saying we bring back these policies, those are perfect, where you could state that you could state that each city, you're going to get this money back, but then this is what we want to see with it. But that's where you would put those policies in.
so is this the kind of conversation you're suggesting be addressed at a later meeting on this subject?
Correct,
Yes.
because we got to bring you more information,
So
and
for the purpose of the agendized item, would the policy board consider passing the agenda item contingent that the two recommendations from the Finance and Management Committee be part of that motion, which is to discuss the detailed accounting as well as address the remaining funding that might be reimbursed to the cities and counties and what that would look like?
We're not quite at the motion part yet, but
Okay, but if
Yeah.
that's a.
Just keep in mind that there's a timing issue with the master funding agreement. There is a timing issue because we want to get that out to all the cities so that they can sign off on it, so we can continue to get you your Measure L funds. So I'm just saying that so everyone realizes whatever you decide to do, that you know that master funding agreement needs to go to your councils, come back to us, and then we can pay you effective July 1.
any other questions?
So it seems like the concern from the Management and Finance Committee and some of the people here is just that there's some sort of true up done at the end of the year. And if those funds are still sitting there, that it gets back to the cities. So, I mean, it seems like we can just go ahead, if we have that kind of addition to the motion, or if we just approve this and instruct staff to come back
Mhm.
with this at
Yes.
the next meeting
Right.
with to deal with the policy of this
Right.
true up. And then if it does go back, it gets spent on, if that's okay too, whichever way works.
And I think Vito had some good points, and I think the Management and Finance Committee needs to hear those points. And so, because they're the ones that, control city budgets in our cities, and they can give some direction or whatever on how we want to look at, the future 1 or 2 years down the road, if we know we've got a big project coming up, what the cost is going to be and what the funds are going to be to order to put that, project out.
Any other questions?
Can I bring up something, and this has something to do with this, but doesn't, but it's in the master funding agreement. It has to do with the maintenance of effort. We've discussed this before. We still haven't taken any action. City of Turlock, if you remember, are putting half of their major money into roads. It was post Measure L, but they're still putting money in it, and it shouldn't become a part of the maintenance of effort. And this board is supposed to take action. And I'm afraid that someday we're all going to be gone and something's going to come up and Turlock's going to be on the hook. And I think that's something we need to address in the future also, the future meeting.
We can definitely make note of that. Also, the ordinance does address the maintenance of effort item, and it does indicate that if an agency is looking for those special circumstances, as you're alluding to, that they need to make that petition to the policy board. So we would need to reach out and work with City of Turlock staff to make that happen.
I would suggest, because we want to encourage cities and the county to do extra, but it shouldn't become a part of their maintenance of effort post Measure L. And I know it takes an action from this board to come up with a special circumstance. Now, we're going to do it this time because I need to go back to Turlock now that I know Turlock has to make the request. We didn't, because the maintenance of effort, some cities had an actual maintenance of effort pre-Measure L. So they had to continue that. This is post, but someone could say that it's additional money and becomes a part of the maintenance of effort. And we have to, this board needs to take action to protect anything post. Does that make sense? Yeah. Uh-huh.
Remember us talking about this a long time ago, and I thought we came to some sort of,
Change of council.
okay.
All right, any other questions? All right, I'll open it up to public. Any public comment on this agenda item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board and entertain a motion.
Would you be so kind as to, based on your notes, reiterate what motion you heard?
Yes, of course, Member Escudia Brighton. So the motion that, well, there are two separate motions that potentially have been raised. I'll start with Member Withrow since his was the easiest. What I heard Member Withrow suggesting as a motion would be a motion to approve the Measure L Master Funding Agreement for fiscal years 25, 26 through 2029, 2030, and to direct staff to bring back a policy discussion as it pertains to the 1% for public outreach.
And so I'm okay with that, but if you guys aren't comfortable with that, then I'm okay with more if you want.
So that was one potential. The other motion, which you mentioned, Member Scudia Brayton, is to, again, approve item 6A on the agenda, but to include a provision in the master funding agreement about a detailed accounting for the 1% for public outreach, and to direct staff to bring back an item pertaining to the return or a potential revision to the policy for the public outreach and return of unspent funds.
Isn't number 2 what Terry said as well?
So Member Withrow's motion, as I heard it, did not include including the provision for the detailed accounting in the master funding agreement.
Yeah, so maybe we could just add those two, consolidate those two, and that would be the motion that encompasses everyone's concerns.
So then that would be a motion to approve item 6A to include a provision for a detailed accounting of the 1% and to direct staff to bring back the 1% policy for public outreach for a future agenda item. So I can't make the motion. I can state the motion.
I'll make the motion. Does everyone feel comfortable with that?
I second that motion.
Okay, then I'll second that motion. Thank you, David. I made the motion, you're seconding it. Okay.
I have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous. All right, moving on to 6B, motion to approve the 2024 Stanislaus County Demographic and Employment Forecast for incorporation into the 2026 Regional Transportation Plan Sustainable Community Strategy. Elizabeth Hahn, how are you?
Great. It's good to see you. Sorry, I didn't mean to speak so loud. Thank you, Chair and members of the board. I just wanted to say a few things before we have our presenter talk with you about the results of the demographic forecast. Each update of our Regional Transportation Plan Sustainable Community Strategy comes with, we basically do a demographic, employment, and housing forecast with that. And the primary reason for that is we need that kind of data looking out to 2050. That's the horizon year for our regional transportation plan in order to get that data into our model. It makes for more accurate modeling. So it goes into our land use model, goes into our travel demand model, and then ultimately the output from those models go into our air quality model. So that's really the primary reason for doing this analysis. The Center for Business and Policy Research is at the University of Pacific is one that had performed this analysis for us in many past years, many updates of our RTP-SES. When we had a model that we were sharing with San Joaquin Council of Governments and with Merced, UOP provided that service, and they continue now that we're running our models separately from those two regions. Also, I just wanted to mention a few other things. Let's see. There's a lot of different data sources that were used in this analysis, including U.S. Census data and Department of Finance, like State Department of Finance numbers, and many, many other sources, including an econometrics model that's been applied. And there's certain constraints that we have to work within. For example, on population, there's a requirement that for our RTP-SES that we stay within a 1.5% tolerance of the population numbers that come out of the Department of Finance. So there's a very little wiggle room. Whatever they come out with, we get started using those numbers, and then we run with that. And the DOF, the Department of Finance, will come up, like they have mid-year and annual updates of their forecasts. But once the UOP starts going on their analysis and does all this modeling, they just keep going. They check these mid-year and annual estimates to see if there's anything significant that's changed that might warrant us maybe taking a step back and repeating the process. As of yet, there hasn't been anything like that. So, some of the local agencies may see some differences in the latest numbers that are released by the Department of Finance. But for the sake of our work on the RTP-SES, we don't have any need at this time to do any updates. Also, a lot of questions come up as we were meeting. We met with each of the local member agencies, planning directors, community development directors, and their designated staff. Some of the questions came up as, does this have relevance to the regional housing needs assessment? And will this information be used for the next RHNA update? No, this is the California Housing and Community Development. They do their own analyses for the regional housing needs assessment. For the needs determination that they do, there's no relationship with this forecast. So when you see differences, like this analysis includes a housing needs estimate, the numbers may be different from what the Housing Community Development agency comes up with, but there's nothing to be concerned there. Also, this demographic forecast has no influence on local agency receipt of funding. It just, as I said, it's merely a vehicle for us to update our models so that we can get more accurate results and see whether, with all your projects, all the local agency projects included in our model, do we still meet national ambient air quality standards? Do we still meet the state required greenhouse gas emission targets? And I'm sorry. So I also wanted to clarify that we met in October. We met with every single representative of the local agencies. Michael and I, we had remote meetings. We presented them with a preliminary draft of this document. Before we met with them, they had an opportunity to provide feedback. We wanted to get an indication of what's happening on the ground and does the initial estimate, ring true for them. And they provided feedback, and then UOP went back and made adjustments where it was feasible and appropriate. Then we submitted a draft again to those agencies and even presented to the Valley Vision Stanislaus committee, because they're really the primary organization that this is focused on, the SCS. And they provided some feedback after our first presentation. Second presentation, we gave them another 2 weeks. They came back and made a recommendation that we advance this to the board for adoption. So I feel very confident in the results of this analysis, and just wanted to kind of relay those things to you if you have similar questions. Thomas Pogue's here, Director of the Center for Business and Policy Research. He conducted this analysis. He has a BA and MA in economics and a PhD in economics as well. And he's going to go ahead and take this over. Thanks.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I want to just run through the analysis, and then I'm happy to take any questions that you have. I'll try to be relatively brief, but I'm happy to go into any details that you all might have about the forecast. If we could go to the next slide, please. So the forecast process, as any forecast, it involves developing a model and then refining the model and then reflecting on the model and then making further refinements. In this case, we used a model called the Regional Economic Models, Inc., REMI for short, which is used by policy analyses, policy COGS around the state and around the country. This model, we are a sub-licensee from the MTC in the Bay Area. It's an integrated model with the Bay Area, San Joaquin County, Merced County, Stanislaus County, obviously, as well as SACOG and some of this, and Fresno as well, are part of the integrated model that we used as our baseline. After looking at the baseline forecast, we recognize that the model has to be calibrated, because when the data is released, it's a large data for the entire country. We have to calibrate for more recent data that's been available since the release of the model. We did that capturing what was available at the time. We started this in the middle of the summer last year, and at that time, the most recent data available was the 2024 January 1st estimates that the DOF released. So in May 1st of last year. So those were that was the most recent key calibration point that we had for the county and cities. And then we also recognize that these models don't know what's happening on a local level. They don't know about the specific dynamics that are driving growth. The amenities that our region, that Stanislaus County in particular has in terms of connections to growth and initiatives in San Joaquin County, employment opportunities from workers coming in from Merced County, as well as connections to the Bay Area, linkages with growth on the west side along the 5, the transportation and warehousing growth over there. Important projects like Stanislaus 2030 and Valley Rail initiatives change the attractiveness in terms of people's willingness to migrate and commute. And so we made adjustments for that as well. After we made those adjustments, we found that the adjustments actually fell very closely in line with the DOF. There's a figure in the report which shows that making those adjustments after the calibration, we were throughout the forecast horizon within that 1.5% difference from the DOF's forecast as well at a county level. Then we use sub-county specific data also from DOF in the May 1st January estimate. And then we had those series of conversations, which Elizabeth already alluded to. If we can go on to the next slide. So you can't see the numbers very easily on the display, but the important thing to recognize here is that in contrast to what Stanislaus has seen for a lot of its previous history, growth is dramatically slowing down. And as Stanislaus hit the pandemic, growth actually declined for the first time in a long while, seeing declines of about 500 people in 2021 and about 1,500 in 2022. Since that, there was a marginal increase in 2023 and a significant improvement in more recent data that's come out showing 2024 mid-year estimates that were released in December of 2024. And now this newest 2025 estimate, which just came out in the beginning of this month, shows another growth year. But the framing of where this forecast comes is in the context of what most of the last series of forecasts have been, is declining growth rates, where we're seeing in-migration rates slowing down, and most importantly, Stanislaus County's fertility rates are slowing. The not necessarily good thing is that Stanislaus County is not alone in particularly these fertility rates slowing down. The decline in fertility rates from 2003 to 2023 was 22%. And in particular, the slowdown in the Hispanic population's fertility rate has exceeded what assumptions were made in previous forecasts. And so as we're catching up, we see these forecasts looking relatively optimistic. And then the reality is that people just aren't having children as the same rate. Women are postponing having kids till later in life, and the costs of raising families are more and more expensive, which seem to be influencing those fertility rates. So that's dramatically slowed it down. And again, another important influence which we see in this data up here on the chart is, despite what was thought at the time, there was not a huge influx of remote workers moving into Stanislaus County and other parts of the Central Valley. They went to other states, bordering states in Nevada, Idaho, Texas, Florida. We heard all those stories on the news. They didn't influx into the nearby counties. They went out of California. And that also contributed significantly to this slowdown that we see in population here. Next slide. So as a result, we see we're now projecting in 2050 a county population of about 587,000. That is down almost 100,000 from what we looked at 5 years ago when we did the last RTP SCS. Even the 2025 estimate is down 35,000. And again, that's just that flattening of the growth curve, which is being seen across the state and across the Central Valley. Yeah. So this again is continuing a trend which has occurred over the last 2 or 3 cycles in particular of the slowing population growth. When we looked at what changes in composition, which we look at in the next slide, we see that despite the slowing of population, there are dramatic changes as we look at the demographic components. In particular, we see that the Hispanic population over that period from 2025 to 2050 is forecast to grow by 22%, increasing by 63,000, while the white non-Hispanic population is forecast to decline by 43,000 in that same period. So there's changes within the population as well, which are quite dramatic. The highest growth rate of any group is the other non-Hispanic population, which in Stanislaus County is primarily Asian. And that's an increase of 15,000, but that's a 27% increase over this 25-year period. And the other demographic which is forecast here is the Black non-Hispanic, which is relatively small compared to the others. It's relatively static with a 2% increase over that 25-year horizon. On the next slide, we show another important demographic change that is occurring, and that's the aging of the population. In the next 25 years, over the 2025 to 2050 forecast, the population of the county's children, 14 years and under, is forecast to decline by 9,400, an 8% decrease. The population of young adults, 15 to 24, is forecast to decline by 12,500, a 15% decrease, while the prime working age population, 25 to 64, will increase by 7%, 20,000 people. But most dramatically is this growth in the senior population, where 65 and overs are forecast to increase 44%, or 37,000 people in total. So there's a lot of change, even though the forecast is flattening in terms of the total population. There's a lot of demographic change which continues to occur in the county. The next slide shows what we did to get that housing needs estimate. We looked at all those demographic characteristics and looked at the heads of households, what was their age, the age cohorts, the race and ethnicity cohorts, and the associated size of their families. And as those change over time, those populations change over time, we looked at the household formation, and we used that to extrapolate from the population this housing needs forecast. And again, importantly, this is not part of the RHNA process. This is separate from the RHNA process. The RHNA numbers were set in a different forecast several years ago. And in that process, again, there was a higher expectation of population growth. So as a result, there were higher housing needs estimates several years ago with that RHNA process.
Yeah, what our RHNA numbers were, was it 32,000? It seems like a much better way to do it.
We've heard that from a lot of the jurisdictions as well, that was much more.
Talk with the RHNA guys.
Yeah. And then on the next slide, the third important component of the county level forecast was the employment forecast. That shows growth faster than the population forecast, with a 9.7% increase over the 25-year horizon. Part of that is due to demographics, but again, relatively robust employment growth compared to the population growth. Leading sectors, which are included in the report, are particularly healthcare, where there's a 28% increase over this 25-year period. An additional 10,600 jobs are being forecast. Transportation and warehousing being also a very significant growth point, with 5,200 jobs growing in this. The most significant decline, and again, this in the pandemic, we all were very well aware of this, and it continues to be true, is in retail trade, where the online is putting pressure on the size of the retail sector. And that's a forecast decline of about 3,400 jobs in that. So that's what we did at the county level. I'm going to just shift now to walk you through what we did at the sub-county level and how we estimated that, and then I'm happy to take any questions. The next slide, please. So there's different ways to delineate the county. Each city and its boundaries have distinct population estimates which are generated. And then to look at the way growth changes in the subregions, it's necessary to aggregate the unincorporated areas. And rather than just treat them as one mass, we broke them out using census designated, oh gosh, I forgot the name, census districts. And those were combined to form the central, northern, eastern, and southern portions, unincorporated portions of the county. And then we added all those together, so there would be a top line unincorporated number for the county estimates. We looked at the trends in the sub-county levels, what the growth rates had been previously, applied those to account for differences, and then what was happening at the county level, and then had a initial estimate, which we brought to each of the counties, excuse me, each of the jurisdictions in the county, and had those conversations, which Elizabeth mentioned, where we identified, what new projects, what new developments, what are we not accounting for, what industrial areas are maybe coming online, what constraints on growth are the jurisdictions facing. And through those, we made some adjustments. Those adjustments were principally around population and related to the growth in Patterson and Modesto, where we saw through those conversations that we were underestimating, we believed from what they were saying and the numbers they were giving us, their projected growth slightly. So we made some adjustments, as well as restraining, because these all have to add up to the county level, dialing back slightly the projection in Turlock, because they were not anticipating the continued growth that we had made some assumptions of previously. So with that, on the next slide, we derived the local area population growth, which you see in this forecast. I'm happy to walk through that, but at a high level, I'll just mention that Patterson has the highest growth rates, but in terms of actual population numbers, not surprisingly, it's Modesto, followed by Turlock and Ceres in terms of the size of the population. We can discuss if you have any questions about these specifics, but I'll just leave it at that for now. On the next slide, we did the same process in terms of looking at the demographic compositions to estimate the household forecast. Given those population numbers, what were the number of households that are estimated? And in terms of the forecast growth in those. Again, this is not part of the RHNA process, but that growth is quite a bit smaller than what the previous RHNA forecast had. And finally, the forecast also looked at the next slide at a decomposition of employment. And in the appendices of this report, you'll see it's broken out by sectors, which are very rough approximations when you're looking at sub-county employment forecasts. A couple of projects can change these assumptions a lot. So it's a bit difficult, but we did our best looking at the historic records and again, what we had learned from our conversations with the local jurisdictions. Next slide, please. Again, these growth rates are lower than they have been in past projections. They are forecasting a much slower population growth into the future. The household needs are lower than past projections. Importantly, for the sustainable RTP SCS strategies, those lower growth rates are going to make it more difficult to meet some of the emission standards, because when you have growing population, you have more people to share it out over. And now we have basically this, a set amount of pollution that we're trying to deal with, and fewer vehicles and fewer people that we're having to distribute that across. So it will make this obtaining those greenhouse gas emissions targets for this 2026 SCS update more challenging. And again, importantly, these challenges Stanislaus is not alone in. It's a fact that most counties across California are facing, and actually the growth rates in Stanislaus County are higher than the projected state rates, and again, giving it some optimism, even though compared to historic rates, it's a different world from what we've seen previously. Thank you.
Dr. Pogue and Elizabeth, thank you for your presentation. We'll bring it back to the board and entertain any questions. Any questions for the doctor?
I don't know if I have a, oh, go ahead.
I would like to know what was shared with you all by planning, because when I had talked to our planning department, the information was a little bit different. So I would just be curious what was shared with planning because our numbers for Riverbank specifically are not correct.
Sorry, could you explain?
The population number that you have for Riverbank
Uh-huh.
is our population from 2019.
No, I just checked the DOF forecast before this. The 2025 number, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, Department of Finance last night said 2025 was 26,090.
Right, and that's what I was, that 1,200 difference is a result of their May 1st estimates that were released, their January 1st estimates that were released May 1st.
Okay, so my question would be what you're pulling from Department of Finance and what our planning department is sharing with you guys and from the study, how all of that has translated into the numbers that you have forecasted for Riverbanks. Well, overall, I guess.
Well, again, it's the county level, which we then look at what portion each jurisdiction composes of that county level population. And we found alignment very closely to what the forecasts are. As the DOF looks at new data coming in, they'll update it. So there's a year difference in the forecasts, which is that difference that your staff is seeing in terms of that 1,200 population difference. That's because the forecast has been updated and they're seeing relatively higher growth in Riverbank than what was being estimated back last year at this time.
Any other questions for the doctor? No, let's. Go ahead, Terry.
I was just going to say, with regard to the fertility issues in our county, as a practicing Catholic, we have done our share to try to provide as many individuals here in the county.
I would just comment on that in 2003, Stanislaus was lower than Merced and San Joaquin County in fertility rates, and now it's slightly higher than both of them. So perhaps there is something going on there.
Any other questions? All right, I'll open it up to public comment. Is there any public comment in regards to this agendized item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board for a motion. I have a first.
Second.
and A second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Unanimous.
I'll take a piece.
Moving on to 6C, motion to adopt the draft public participation plan for the 2026 Regional Transportation Plan and Sustainable Community Strategy. Elizabeth, back again.
Thank you. In accordance with the federal regulations, metropolitan planning organizations like StanCogs are encouraged to engage in metropolitan planning process that creates opportunities for public involvement, participation, and consultation through development of our transportation improvement program and our regional transportation plan and sustainable strategies, sustainable community strategies, and other projects and programs that we're involved with. So MPOs like ours, they typically have agency public participation plans that identify strategies for public and stakeholder outreach and engagement for all phases of the planning work that we do. In addition to the federal requirements, there was a state Senate Bill 375, the Sustainable Communities Climate Protection Act, which was enacted in law in 2008 that required MPOs to prepare the sustainable community strategy to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from cars and light trucks. Senate Bill 375 also introduced its own requirement specifically for the SES that requires MPOs to adopt a supplemental public participation plan. I'll call it PPP from here on out because I tend to trip up on that. That it's basically in addition to the agency-wide plan. And that plan is to identify an outreach approach to encourage active participation of a broad range of stakeholder groups in the planning process, consistent with our agency plan. It requires that we consult with other agencies, and specifically, it has an additional requirement that we prepare and circulate the draft SES not less than 55 days prior to board approval. Next slide, please. So it also specifies a certain minimum number of public hearings that we're supposed to have In our case, it's 2 for our region. It requires also a minimum of 3 workshops held in counties that have a population greater than 500,000. So we have a requirement for 3 workshops. And as I will show you in the rest of this presentation, we have a very robust public outreach approach for our work. We go well beyond these basic requirements. It also requires a process by which members of the public can make a single request to receive information and updates during the development of the regional transportation plan and sustainable community strategy. Next slide, please. So if you go to the next slide, this has kind of a summary of what our public participation plan or PPP approach is for the STANCOG 2026 SES. So we have prepared a draft and we posted it in mid-April. It's been up there. We haven't received any comments other than a few comments that we received when we presented it to the Valley Vision Stanislaus Steering Committee. As in the past, we've identified a rigorous approach. We've got 10 community workshops that will be held in central locations throughout the region, 15 community meetings. They might be held as focus groups that will target incorporated and unincorporated areas to address the diverse needs of different populations. And those community meetings will solicit participation by a very broad group of different neighborhood groups, community-based organizations, business and development communities, advocacy groups, and others. And we'll also be coordinating with the cities and counties to get on your agendas for city council meetings and for county board of supervisor meetings, so we can present through your meetings as well. Further outreach will be conducted, or actually we've already started. We already met with your engineering and public works reps on developing an update to the RTP project list. And as mentioned before, we met with the planning directors and the community development directors on the demographic forecast. And we've also held 2 Valley Vision Stanislaus steering committees. Since we started, we had one in, I believe it was January, and another one just recently on May 8th. So for meeting federal requirements, we've also contacted, we've already outreached to, I want to say maybe 9 tribal organizations that have ancestral ties to Stanislaus County. And that's specifically for getting input as we develop an environmental impact report that's associated with the RTP update to, consider impacts. So, SB 375 requires broad outreach and consultation with other agencies, and we'll be doing that with the California Air Resources Board, Federal Highways, FTA, Caltrans, your local member agencies, and others. Next slide, please. We also have established a project website. We call it Valley Vision 2049. It provides a clearinghouse for sharing information on the RTPS as we do the update. It will provide schedule updates, information on upcoming meetings. We'll post videos and slide presentations for meetings, and we'll provide online forms that the public can use to have that single, that way of, in one fell swoop, requesting information for the remainder of the planning project on notices and meetings and that sort of thing. And so we've already started developing this website. So if you want to check it out, please do, and feel free to give me any input or feedback. We're going to be building upon that to add, more information that's accessible to Hispanic and Latino populations, and adding more documents like presentations and recordings from meetings. So on this slide, just wanted to also explain that as part of this process, we also will have a certified bilingual Spanish and English interpreter at our public meetings and workshops, and we'll arrange for translation of key documents like we typically do our plan, executive summary, meeting presentations, display boards, flyers, questionnaires, and those kinds of things we usually translate into Spanish. And is there another slide? Oh, okay, thanks. We'll also make use, as part of our PPP of news media. We've identified 9 media outlets that are listed here above. If there's any more that you know of, please definitely let me know. But I think we've identified all that are currently in existence right now to do public noticing and press releases and announce upcoming meetings, that kind of thing. And the Valley Vision Stanislaus Steering Committee is our primary sounding board for the Sustainable Community Strategy, and we'll be continuing to meet with them. Most recently, we presented this draft PPP to the Valley Vision Stanislaus Committee, and the members expressed support for our approach for ensuring the public outreach would be inclusive of the needs of residents in both the unincorporated as well as the incorporated areas. And I shared the staff report, as I shared in the staff report, a few of the members made us aware that they had some difficulty. When they got to the meeting, they expressed they had some difficulty accessing the document. I don't know if it was a firewall or if, something with the software, but we immediately sent out a Word documents, and they said they were comfortable with what they heard in our presentation of this approach for public outreach. And so they unanimously approved taking this further, recommending that the board approve the plan. And if there were any comments that we received before this meeting or any changes that were made, we committed that we would follow back up with them, but we haven't received any further comments. So this completes my presentation. I'm available if you have any questions.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Appreciate the report. Thank you for all the great work you've been doing. I know you've been really busy lately and putting in a lot of hours, and we just want to say how appreciative we are of that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Take care. Thanks.
All right, any questions for Elizabeth?
I would just like to jump on board with what you said, because doing this is so technical, and along with the last item, it is a thankless job. And I attended a couple of the SES meetings. This is public participation, and it's like watching paint dry, and not in a bad way, because it's necessary. And people who are able to do that work, I have the greatest respect for you. So thank you, Elizabeth.
Any public comment on this agenda? Did you have a question, Manny? No? Okay. Any questions from the public? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board for a motion. I have a first. I have a second. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Unanimous. All right, I hope everybody's had a time to look at the informational items on the agenda. And now we're at Caltrans report. Caleb Brock, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Always great to have Caltrans here with us.
It's great to be here too. My name is Caleb Brock. I am filling in for Grace tonight. I'm the current acting deputy of district director for planning, local assistance, and environmental support. Long name. And the permanent ad just went out yesterday to backfill the position permanently, so there'll be someone in place in the upcoming months. So excited about that. A couple announcements. So first, in April, Caltrans Director Tony Tavares announced that he would be retiring. So he has since retired. And Mike Keever, who's the chief deputy, is now acting director for Caltrans. The second item is due to the federal policy changes, Caltrans is looking at their processes in conjunction with environmental justice and climate change. So the Caltrans Division of Local Assistance is in the process of updating their local assistance procedures manual to reflect the recent issued federal executive orders, which rescinded previous executive orders relating to several environmental topics, including environmental justice and climate change. Those affected chapters are being updated, and so we'll have some more information on that soon. If you do have questions, Samantha Soto at headquarters, or we can put you in touch at the district level. Next two items are opportunities, funding opportunities. So the first one is through the USDOT. I think it's been brought to the board the last couple months, but it's the Safe Streets and Roads for All. It's a call for application that improve roadway safety by significantly reducing and eliminating roadway fatalities. and serious injuries through safety action plan development and refinement and implementation focused on all users. So the current available funding is $982 million. The deadline is June 26th for applications. Eligible applicants are NPOs, county governments, federal recognized tribal governments. If your jurisdiction does need help with the application or a letter of support from the district, you can reach out to us and we're happy to provide that. The second funding opportunity is through the California Energy Commission. So it's under the Clean Transportation Program. The program provides funding and to support innovation and accelerate the development and deployment of zero-emission transportation and fuel technologies. So the available funding for that program is $20 million. The deadline for applications is July 18th. We have an announcement. So April 22nd, Caltrans District 10 maintenance crews in partnership with Clean California Program participated in the community cleanup event throughout the district as part of the third annual Clean California Community Days. Community groups, local businesses, and residents joined these events. Caltrans workers took part in picking up litter along State Route 108, 120, and 132 in observance of Earth Day to promote Clean California Community Days and encourage travelers to keep our state beautiful. The cleanup event was part of an ongoing effort to keep local California communities clean and beautiful. And then lastly, I have one project update that we thought the board may be interested in. So it's currently under construction and it'll be completed next summer. But we're installing and upgrading TMS, which is Transportation Management System enhancements, and paving areas for multiple locations in San Joaquin and Stanislaus County. So the project proposes to upgrade existing and inefficient, outdated TMS elements and pave areas for maintenance vehicle pullouts to help with safety. In San Joaquin County on Route 120, as well as in Stanislaus County on State Route 4, 33, 99, 108, 120, 132, 219, and on Interstate 5. So there's a total of 66 locations where we're making these improvements. So definitely a need for the improvement in mobility and safety for the traveling public to ensure the TMC has reliable, real-time, live video feed of roadway traffic and weather conditions, and to provide the TMC the advanced warning of congestion or incidents to help ensure the appropriate development of emergency response resources. There's also a need to provide maintenance vehicle access to these facilities to improve safety for both the traveling public and field employees by reducing the frequency and exposure to live traffic. So I'm happy to answer any questions or take any concerns back to the district that the board has.
Thank you, Caleb. Any questions for Caleb?
Thanks for being here, Caleb. Is Grace on vacation? Is that what is she coming, Grace coming back, or is she?
I believe she had an engagement in Sacramento.
Okay, perfect. We just had, I can call her and ask her about this, but there was, we were looking to try to get some K-rails out on 132 out at the curves out there where it crosses the river. And there was a study that they were working on. Caltrans was, of course, doing a study and I just wonder where that stands. I know it was supposed to be done a while ago. So anyway, K-rails, curves, 132 out there, west 132, right by the river, and where that study stands at this point to try to see if it's justified.
I'll look into it, make sure.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry to bug you with that.
No, yeah, that's what we're here for.
Any other questions for Caleb? All right, any public comment? Seeing none, bring it back. Thank you, Caleb, for the report. Executive Director report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. Thank you for being here tonight. And Caleb, thank you for being here representing Grace. So we appreciate that. I wanted to introduce you a new person that we have to our team members. As you know, we've been trying to hire people, and I just want to introduce Anita Reyna, who works in our finance department, and she comes to us with over 30 years of experience at working in finance and payroll. So we're very happy, and she's the most popular person here. at Payroll.
Welcome.
So we appreciate her. I also wanted to inform you, members, thank you for those that participated. I know Jean Falletta, I want to thank her and her team. They've been working hard at passing out good information regarding what month signifies. There's a lot of significations from May. However, this month is Bike to Work Month, and so encouraging healthy walking, biking, or carpooling together. They're more bicycling. And so we had our staff out there on last week, and Josie and Shannon, thank you for waking up at 6 in the morning and doing the whole bike event in the Modesto Center. And there's a picture there of Josie and our mayor at a Santa Cruz early morning. Yeah, so I wanted to share that and thank the staff for participating on that. Also, I wanted, Elizabeth already talked in detail about our Valley Vision Stanislaus meeting. Those meetings are starting to happen, and we want to thank your staff for participating and being very engaged with us, because we need their work. I mean, we need their partnership. We can't do our work, our regional transportation plan, our sustainable communities, without the expertise of your staff. So we really, truly appreciate them. And so it's been great. And Elizabeth shared a lot of information today with the demographic census and then the public participation. But this is not an alone work. This has been a partnership with our member agencies. So we want to thank them. And we also want to thank the member that stood up to be part of our Valley Vision Stanislaus, and that is our member Rachel Hernandez. And she was appointed to be the chair of that committee. So she's starting a new role there, and a lot of technical work, but she's doing a great. We were very pleased to work with her. So thank you, members, and that concludes my report.
All right, thank you. All right, moving on to member reports. Any reports from member reports?
I said it about Elizabeth, but to all the staff, we've been kind of short-staffed and there has been an extra workload, and your nose to the grindstone has not gone unnoticed by the board. Appreciate all of the staff.
With what Vito says. We know you guys have been putting in a lot of hours, a lot of hard work, and we appreciate it very much. Thank you very much. Any other reports? Oh, and I did take pictures of Measure L projects out and about, but I forgot to send the pictures in. I don't see any of you guys putting in pictures. Let's go. Measure L projects. We got to make them out there. Let's go. So next meeting, let's get them in. All right, we're going to adjourn to closed session. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. Yeah, no worries.
Good night.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Hey, it's good to see you.
Yeah. Reportable action. Okay, we're reconvening back from closed session. And we'll go ahead and let Monica give us a report out.
Thank you. So the board has resumed or returned from closed session. All of the members were present for the duration of closed session, and there is no reportable action.
All right, we'll be in adjournment.